Over 2,500 years ago, in the lush plains and forested hills of the Ganges Valley, an empire was rising that would set the foundation for one of the greatest civilizations of the ancient world, India. The kingdom of Magadha, ruled by the Haryankya Dynasty, was on the brink of transformation. At the heart of this change stood a young prince destined to be a wise king, a fierce warrior, and a visionary ruler, Bimbisara. Bimbisara ascended the throne at the tender age of 15, a child by most standards. But he was no ordinary boy. He had grown up observing the politics of the court, listening to elders debate dharma and kingship, and training under seasoned warriors. His father, King Bhattiya, had prepared him well, for the times were turbulent. The land of Magadha, situated in present-day Bihar, was fertile and strategically important, but surrounded by rival kingdoms, Anga to the east, Kosala to the north, and Avanti to the west. To survive, the new king needed more than ambition. He needed strategy. And Bimbisara had plenty of it. One of the first marks of Bimbisara's political genius was his use of marriage alliances. Rather than relying solely on warfare, he secured peace with powerful kingdoms through family ties. His first queen, Kosala Devi, was the princess of Kosala and the sister of King Prasenjit. This marriage brought not only goodwill, but also the rich Kashi region as dowry, significantly boosting Magadha's economy. His second marriage was to Chalana, a Lichavi princess of Vaishali, which strengthened relations with the powerful Republican state to the north. These alliances ensured that Magadha would not face war on multiple fronts, giving Bimbisara the breathing room to consolidate power at home. But not all rivals could be pacified through marriage. To the east lay the kingdom of Anga, ruled by King Brahmadatta, a monarch who had once humiliated Bimbisara's father. The young king had waited long for revenge, not out of personal hatred, but to restore Magadha's honor. At the age of 20, Bimbisara marched east with a mighty army. The battle was swift and decisive. Anga fell, King Brahmadatta was slain, and Bimbisara appointed his own son, as the governor of the newly annexed province. Now, Magadha's territory stretched to the eastern seaboard, giving it access to maritime trade routes and making it one of the most prosperous regions in the Indian subcontinent. Though a conqueror by sword, Bimbisara's greatness lay in his open heart and curious mind. During his reign, a wave of spiritual reformation swept across India. The old Vedic rituals, dominated by rigid priesthood and sacrifices, were being questioned. New teachers and thinkers emerged, men who taught simplicity, nonviolence, and personal enlightenment. Two of the most prominent among them were Mahavira, the 24th Tirthankara of Jainism, and Siddhartha Gautama, who would come to be known as the Buddha. Bimbisara was deeply influenced by both. Chapter 6. A just ruler and prosperous empire under Bimbisara, Magadha grew not just in land but in law, infrastructure, and governance. He built roads, irrigation canals, and trading outposts to encourage commerce. His court was a place where scholars, philosophers, and diplomats gathered. He encouraged freedom of religion in a time when dogma dominated many regions. He maintained a standing army and efficient spies who kept an eye on political developments across neighboring states. His capital, Rajagraha, nestled among 5 hills, became a center of learning, diplomacy, and spirituality. Foreign travelers like Megasthenes, though he came much later, would later describe Magadha as a land of sophistication, and much of this credit goes to the foundations laid by Bimbisara. Chapter 7. The shadow of betrayal, but even the wisest of kings are not spared from fate's cruel games. As Bimbisara aged, he looked to his son, Ajatashatru, to continue the dynasty. But unknown to him, the prince had grown impatient and ambitious. Jealous of his father's power and influenced by scheming courtiers, Ajatashatru began plotting a coup. The tragedy struck when the prince led a rebellion against his own father. Some texts say that Bimbisara, betrayed and heartbroken, surrendered peacefully. Others narrate that he was imprisoned in a dark cell within the same palace he had once ruled. The betrayal was bitter. The once mighty emperor, who had embraced Dharma and built an empire with wisdom and vision, now sat in chains. Chapter 8. The king who embraced death in silence, yet, even in captivity, Bimbisara did not harbor hatred. He asked only that he be allowed to listen to the sermons of the Buddha from his prison window. And the enlightened one, saddened by the fall of his friend and patron, honored his request. According to legend, Bimbisara continued to meditate and practice the teachings of the Buddha till his last breath. Some versions of the story say Ahashru, overwhelmed by guilt and influenced by his own spiritual awakening under the Buddha's guidance, later released his father, but it was too late. The great king had died in silence, with dignity, forgiving even the hand that betrayed him. Epilogue. Legacy of a Dharmaraja. Bimbisara's life was one of contrasts, a warrior and a sage, a king and a disciple, a builder of empires and a seeker of truth. His rule marked the true beginning of imperial Magadha, which would later give rise to the Mauryan Empire under Chandragupta and Ashoka. He was the first known Indian king to systematically use diplomacy, alliances, and spiritual patronage as tools of statecraft. And though his end came through betrayal, his name lived on with reverence in Buddhist and Jain scriptures and in the memories of the people. Even today, the ruins of Rajgir, the Velluvana Monastery, and the grids of ancient Magadha whisper stories of a king who walked with both crown and compassion. Bimbisara, emperor, philosopher, martyr, a ruler who taught the world that true greatness lies not just in conquests, but in the way one embraces Dharma, even in defeat.